actually hopefully see each other. It's wonderful to see you all here, and welcome to, wow, 2021. Who thought we would ever get there? But we have, and it might not look exactly how we wanted it to, but here we are. And it's wonderful to have you all with us tonight. And so the idea is that Pippa and I are going to introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about the need for resilience, which I think you're pretty much convinced of, otherwise you wouldn't be here with us tonight. But then to debunk the myths around resilience. And I just wanted to say to you that it would be fabulous if you keep your cameras on, but your voices on mute. It makes a huge difference for us to be able to see your faces and know who we're talking to. So that would be wonderful. We will end on time, and we will have some time for questions at the end. So if you have burning questions, just write them down, and we'll give you an opportunity near the end to put them into chat. So I'm going to start because Pippa is going to let people in. I know it can be quite distracting, the ping, 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 but at about sort of 1:45, we're actually going to stop letting people in. So then it will go silent. So just so you know. We also understand that with all the chaos and uncertainty and the sort of upside down routines right now, it's actually quite hard to get your laptop to do something at 7:30 at night, especially for those who've got young kids and are trying to homeschool, feed supper, do all of that. So we completely understand, but are going to go ahead for those of you who really have tried hard to get here on time. So welcome. I am Gabi Lowe. I'm a certified professional life coach, and worked many years in the marketing and journalism arena, and went into life coaching about 5 years ago now, and then joined forces with Pippa Shaper. So I have my own consultancy, but I also work very closely with Pippa. So 50% of my time is spent with Pippa on the Resilience Factory.
Hi, and I'm Pippa Shaper. It's lovely to see you all this evening, and we're really delighted that you've come here with us to share this journey about learning a little bit more about what resilience is and what it isn't this evening. And this is the beginning of hopefully a journey that we can share together. Yeah, I'm also an integral coach and facilitator. I work in the non-profit sector, the for-profit sector, and really enjoy a variety of both working on resilience and coaching on my own and other strategy work as well. Gabi was saying, if it's 50% of our time. Last year, it felt like 90% of our time was spent doing resilience work. That's absolutely sure. Because the fact is that this is just so needed. Never, I think, in history has this been more needed.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So front of mind 2020, we know globally front of mind was COVID. I've sensed with some of my clients quite a sort of flat entry into 2021. Some people really hung their hat on the fact that things would change. There was this kind of expectation that Christmas and New Year would come and go, and maybe things would be different in 2021. But COVID is still front of mind. The pandemic is still very much front of mind, and the impact of it on us all is huge. In fact, a lot of people are talking about the fact, is COVID the pandemic, or is the mental health crisis the pandemic? And there's going to be a long tail in terms of mental health, without a doubt. What people need, what we all need, are skills, tools, coping mechanisms to cope, because it's not going away, and it's not going to go away for a very long time. And even when it does, real life carries on. And just because you've had a good lot of trauma meted out your way doesn't mean it's going to not keep on coming. It doesn't come in neat little parcels, unfortunately. So what we need are the skills, the tools, and the coping mechanisms in order to cope with ongoing financial pressure, to cope with economic uncertainty, real uncertainty. What happened to the joy or the comfort of planning? We can still do it, but we know they're going to be broken, most of them. To deal with grief, because it's all around us. To deal with loss, and bosses who aren't equipped to deal with that are having to deal with staff who are facing loss all of the time. To deal with illness, which as we can see, is just so prevalent. To deal with business closures, to deal with family disconnect, which has been really tough for a lot of people. Ongoing heightened levels of anxiety, which for some people is very new. And how do you do that? How do you keep on making plans? How do you keep on finding joy? How do you keep on going when there are these raised levels of anxiety? Job losses, homeschooling. I mean, it's not easy. We chose not to be teachers for a reason. And of course, isolation. And isolation is a huge one. We are social beings, we're wired for connection, and to be coping with this level of isolation and disconnect is tough. So the World Health Organization is constantly reminding us for the need for resources to support us to get through.
And this really, if we think about it, this is just the sort of, the normal stuff that most of us have been dealing with this last year since the world really changed. Now, let's look at the additional stress and pressure that so many people are having facing in the healthcare professions, who are suffering acute levels of anxiety, anticipatory anxiety, PTSD, depression, panic attacks, and other mental health challenges. The suicide rates are already going up. I was reading in the UK Times today that they're seeing that there's going to be a huge amount of nurses leaving nursing at the end of this next year because they just can't cope any longer. I have clients who are senior consultants here in South Africa, and they're not normally dealing with life and death stuff, and they have been thrust into making huge decisions about people's lives, about who should go on a ventilator. And it is hard. It is incredibly hard. So those people have got increased stresses and strains beyond that, those that most of us have had. And I want to also add to that as well about, yes, we've had the chaos in the last 12 months of COVID and every single thing that's gone with it. But I want to add to that the fact that non-COVID trauma still continues. We still lose our loved ones from other reasons. We still go through marital difficulties. We still go through family troubles. We still go through, there is addiction. There are so many other problems that we have as well, that we had before, that we have as well as now, as well as the COVID issues as well. So there are so many other things that we are dealing with. And we just think about what we've already spoken about in the last 5 minutes. It feels like the weight could just like weigh you down. And the fact is, much like, and I know I speak for myself, there's been many times I would have wanted to just run away over the last year, or put my head under the duvet and pretend it's not happening and come up when it's all finished. The fact is that it's not an option. We have to keep on going. We have to engage with it, and we have to equip ourselves with the tools that we need to keep going, really, no matter what.
So what we know is that unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. They just do. And we need to keep looking for more tools, for more measures, for more resources to use to support our staff, to support our families, and to support ourselves, so that we can remain mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually stable and healthy, no matter what life throws at you. And it's going to keep on throwing it. We can't wait until the water's smooth to do that work. We have to be doing the work at exactly the time as we are going through the challenges. That's how it works. So I have no doubt that over the last year, all of you who are here have discovered resources of your own, resiliency tools that work for you, because you've been using those, right? You've been using them day and night. But there are always more. And very often when we are in crisis or in trauma or in the middle of a challenge, what we don't have is a roadmap. We don't have a roadmap. We might have some skills, but we don't have a roadmap. And that's where we come in.
So Gabi and I have our own personal stories and experiences of grief and loss and trauma over many years. We're not going to go into that today. That's some of the stuff that we do on our course. But just to let you know that between the two of us, we have lost 3 children, a husband, a mother, a sister, a niece. We've been through huge amounts of surgery with our children. We've been through rare disease with 2 of our children, 3 of our children. We have been through a lot of grief and loss and trauma and difficulties and challenges over many years. And that's been led to us being asked on an ongoing basis, how do you cope? I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked that question. And whilst we both had a good idea about what was getting each of us through, it wasn't until we partnered up 4 years ago now, and to really start researching the topic of resilience, of what it is and what it isn't, that we discovered this absolutely dire need for a framework to help people find their way through this like really muddiest of waters. And as a result of that, we co-authored a model, it's a framework called the 10 R's of Authentic Resilience. And it is a roadmap, as Gabi says, it's a roadmap, if you like, to really guide you through the really toughest times.
So we've been teaching this model now for 3.5, nearly 4 years. When we started teaching it was 2 years before the pandemic. And there was already such a need. And now we just find ourselves in this situation where, wow, how do we get this to everyone? How do we do that? Because hand on heart, it works. It works. And I have just been through, again, another 6 weeks where I've had to use every single one of our skills and really put them to the test. And they work. So each one of us is going through a unique situation. Of course we are. So you might well say, well, how does one size fits all? How can it possibly be? What it is it's principles for authentic resilience that you will adapt in a way that suits you, but you've got the roadmap, right? So when we've got this amazing roadmap and we want to go on a trip into Africa and we want to do an overland trip into Africa, we need all our tools, and we take our tool bag and we speak to people who've been there before, and we do the research and we look at the map and we put the coordinates into our GPS. But things might go wrong, but we were equipped, we sorted, we're ready. And that's what we do. That's what we give you with this model. So people come away from our courses, our workshops, our retreats saying, wow, it's life-changing, it's inspiring, and it's life-changing, but most importantly, practical. You will be able to use the tools. We can't go into the full framework tonight because it is a 12-hour course minimum, but we hope to give you a little of an overview, and we hope to share some interesting stuff for you that's already going to make a change. And we definitely, at the end of the session, are going to share a few tips that you can take away with you that you can start working with today and using today. So yes, it's in depth, and we only have 45 minutes with you tonight, plus then obviously question time. But we do, we do know that it works, and we want to just give you an overview of exactly what we do and how, so that you have access.
So when we first started studying resilience together in 2017, we were dismayed by the definitions that were given about it. Now, we both knew from our own personal stories, as well as our reading and our research, our case studies, our clients who we worked with, that sustainable resilience, which is that which we call authentic resilience, is not, it's not a suit of armor that you put on just during the tough times, but it's in fact, it's a capacity that is born from deep within us. And authentic resilience is the stuff that lasts a lifetime, and it allows one to live a life which is about thriving and not just surviving. And it's a capacity, this is the great news, it's a capacity that every single one of us can nurture and develop and grow. No matter how your levels of resilience feel right now, if you feel like you've got nothing left to give, they can grow. If you feel you're pretty resilient already, they can grow. But what we've discovered along the way is that there are some pretty commonly held myths about resilience that are not only misleading, but also potentially damaging. And they could well be tripping you up. So what we're going to do just now is we are going to start by unpacking those 10 most common myths of resilience.
Absolutely. Okay, so here we go. The first myth says that resilience is all about bouncing back. Now you go and Google right now, what is resilience? And that's what you're going to get. Bouncing back, being able to bounce back after adversity. Well, I can tell you right now that when you have experienced severe and deep trauma, there is no bouncing. You don't bounce from trauma. It's a ridiculous notion. You might bounce if you had a fender bender in the traffic and you just happen to bump someone's bumper. Yeah, you're going to bounce from that, especially if you have resilience. But when we're talking about trauma, there's no bouncing. And neither would you want to, actually. Because if you do, I can be guaranteed that you haven't done the emotional processing, the work, the working through of what your experience was, all of that work in order to properly heal. If you bounce and you bounce over all of that work that needs to be done, it's going to come back to bite you in the worst possible way. So with real trauma, which is what we're actually all facing right now, there's no bouncing. There's also no going back. And I know that that's hard and it might feel like yet another loss, but we don't go back to who we were before. And in many ways, that's a blessing, because every single day, the experiences of what we experience, what we go through, the dynamics we have, the experiences that we have, what we do in the world goes into the pot of making up who we are, right? A trauma is going to do that and more. An adversity is going to do that and more. We don't want to go back. We want to move forward with new blessings, new learnings, and a new sense of who we are. So that's the first myth. Authentic resilience, resilience that lasts a lifetime, resilience that is true resilience, has got nothing to do with bouncing back.
Yeah, and the second one, it's very commonly held as well, which is about resilience is all about being tough and strong. So it's often assumed that resilience is about being tough and strong and just pushing through and not taking no for an answer and being almost sort of assertive and hardy. But the fact is, it's almost like this idea of it's like going into battle with a suit of impenetrable armor to protect you from the world. But the truth is that this kind of attitude might appear to serve you for a while, but authentic resilience, remember the sustainable stuff, is in fact born from deep within us. It's a capacity, it's not something you put on, it's something from within. It's a capacity that you develop and you nurture and you build during those challenging times from deep inside of you. And paradoxically, the most authentically resilient people are the ones who've got the courage to be vulnerable, to fail, to forgive, all characteristics that can often be thought of as really as weaknesses. And when we look to nature, we actually see the most resilient plants and trees are the ones that are in fact not the tough and hardy looking ones, but very often they're the ones which are the most pliable and flexible. Whilst they don't look the strongest, they are actually capable of withstanding really severe weather conditions. So think of the images when you've seen a palm tree really being blown, like being lashed by a hurricane. You see that they are able to bend without breaking. It's because with its pliable trunk and that deep root system, the palms are able to weather unpredictable storms and severe winds. And in fact, it is the severe storms that have tested the roots and have made it even stronger. So what we need to do is, like the palm tree, we need to resist rigidity, which is the more defensive position, to embrace flexibility, uncertainty, to allow our hearts to soften, to allow vulnerability. And that's when we begin to grow more authentic resilience. We're able to bear the toughest of life's circumstances. So no, resilience is not about all being tough and strong.
So the next myth is that resilient people don't do emotions. And it might appear that way. I mean, maybe when you think of people who are resilient, you imagine them really having their stuff together. You know, they just get on with it. They appear on the outside. But the truth is that authentically resilient people engage with a full range of emotion. And they do it consciously and on a daily basis. That is what gives them the capacity to deal with difficult emotions. So it's so extraordinary for me that so many writers, and even writers on the topic of resilience, academics who write on the topic of resilience, talk about negative, negative and positive emotions. There's no such thing as an intrinsically negative or positive emotion. Emotions are simply emotions. They don't have an inherent goodness or badness. They are simply emotions, and they are all there for a reason. We may assume that anger is bad. It's not. Anger is invigorating. Anger causes movement. Anger makes us make decisions. Anger tells us that something is wrong. What we do with it is what's important. So to steer away from emotions and to assume that people who are able to display and feel are vulnerable or are not strong is actually incorrect. When we try to avoid emotions that we find more challenging, like fear, shame, any of those, anger, actually we decrease our resilience. We decrease our ability for resilience, because it's precisely this thing that nobody quite gets, is that going in there, leaning in, you know about leaning, we talk about it all the time. Leaning in is what builds a capacity to sit with that difficult stuff. Don't shut it down, engage with it. So lots of emotions are going to rise in you when you're faced with difficult situations. Some of them are familiar, some are unfamiliar, some of them might feel terrifying or overwhelming. But here's the thing. Emotions can't kill you. They can feel completely overwhelming, and I've been there, but they can't kill you, and you come out the other side. And processing them is what gives you that capacity for resilience. Shutting them away, saying, I don't do that, I'm not engaging with that, makes them grow. They fester in the dark, and they become stronger, and they have more of a hold over you. So resilient people don't do emotions. It's the opposite. Authentically resilient people do emotion all of the time. They engage with a courageous and open heart with all of their emotions, including the really, really, really challenging ones.
So myth number 4 says that resilience is just about putting your head down and getting on with it. And you know what? This is the myth I bought into for a really long time. I'm British, and I was brought up with that, that stiff upper lip thing, and you just get on with things. But this was my undoing as well. And because the fact is, there are times, we know that there are times where we do just have to put our head down and get on with it. There are moments we have no choice but to keep doing that, no matter how we feel. But we cannot just rely on our willpower and grit alone for a protracted period of time, because it is not an authentically resilient solution. The fact is, if we carry on like that, we will collapse at some stage. It's like walking through the desert on our knees and saying that we're just going to keep on going and keep on going. It's like thinking that you're going to be running a marathon and you just want to get on and do it. You can't just keep on doing that. You've got to rest. And the most resilient of people are that because they stop and refresh and restore and renew themselves along the way. They know how to refuel and fill themselves up. They know how to renew and restore even when they don't feel like it. And they understand the importance of looking after themselves, even when they don't think it should be a priority. Just keeping on working will work for a while, but we're human, and all humans have physical and emotional needs. And really the better way and the authentically resilient way is to ensure that you're taking care of your needs, especially during times of trauma. It's not just about putting your head down and getting on with it. You have to rest.
And that really is something that I learned the hard way. It was 3 to 4 years of fighting for my daughter's life, and then 187 days in ICU. You can't do 187 days in ICU without some self-care. It's not possible. It's not physically possible. And I learned it the hard way. And it's an amazing thing that once you've learned the lesson, and then more trauma comes and waves of it come, and you know, I can deal with that tomorrow. Today, I have to sleep, or I have to do my meditation, or whatever it is that is your wellness technique, you have to engage with them, especially when you don't feel like it, when it feels like it's the least important thing, it's the most important thing. So myth number 6 talks about the fact that so many people believe resilient people are just born that way. You either have it or you haven't. And you
Sorry,
will hear...
Gabi didn't do number 5. You were doing number 2.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, 5 says you can't go it alone, or you can go it alone. And a lot of resilient people think that they can soldier forth, be completely independent, and cope with everything on their own. This is not sustainable. We are social beings. We're wired for connection. Connection is what feeds us. And I think that's part of why people are really battling right now, because we have too little connection and we need it. So how do we feed that need, regardless of the fact that we are in lockdown? We have to come up with creative ways to do that. And we have to remind ourselves to remain connected. Because if you think about, a dog that's in pain, it's really easy to go sit in the corner and lick your wounds. Sometimes it feels like that's the easiest thing to do. It's not the resilient thing to do. The authentically resilient thing to do is to reach out, to ask, to remain connected regardless. And that's quite hard work during lockdown, but it's absolutely essential. So authentically resilient people understand that we are interdependent, not codependent, very unhealthy, and actually not independent. We are interdependent. We're supposed to live in tribes, in teams, as groups, in communities. That is what we wired for. It's what feeds our soul, and it's what keeps us going.
So myth number 6 says that resilient people are just born that way. It's either something you've got or something you haven't. And I can promise you that that one is not true, because I really don't think I was born with a whole heap of resilience. Now, contrary to what people think, resilience isn't a superpower that we're born with, that some lucky people are born with and others aren't. Now, it's true that as a species, we are undoubtedly resilient. Otherwise, human beings wouldn't have survived this far and adapted. But resilience isn't a character strength that you either have or you don't have. Every single one of us is born with a certain level of resilience that can become greater. And authentic resilience, this is what we know, it's a competency that can be learned and acquired and developed and refined through the journey of life. And even more so when there's a conscious decision to grow our resiliency. So yes, it's true that going through the hard times can build your resilience, and it does. And yet it is possible to actually purposefully grow and invest in your resilience, even if you're not going through difficult times, so that you're better equipped when you do go through tough times. It's also true, as you'll know, that you'll see some people who go through tough times and they don't grow their resilience. So it is a decision. It is actually a decision. And that's actually really good news, isn't it? If it was just given to a few blessed people and other people didn't have it, it would be pretty hopeless for the rest of us. But the great news is that everybody has that capacity to grow their levels of resilience, whatever their starting place is. And resilient people have figured out what's worked for them. They've figured out what hasn't worked. And it's very, very encouraging, the fact that wherever you are today, however you are feeling, your levels of resilience can increase, and they can keep increasing. We're doing the same all the time. Gabi and I still, even though this is what we do all the time, we are still growing our levels of resilience all the time.
So myth number 7 talks about how it's simple to acquire and kind of built one way. And I think that it's become very clear with all of our case studies, with all of our research, with what we've been through, and all the people that we've interviewed who've been through some really hectic things in their lives, that actually authentic resilience is complex, it's multi-dimensional, and there are a lot of facets to it. So the very fact that it's made up of so many facets and dimensions is what makes it quite elusive and hard to pin down. So if I was to ask you now, what's your definition of resilience or authentic resilience, you would probably all come up with a rather different definition. It's not something you can learn overnight, but it is something you can employ overnight. If you've got the roadmap, you can start to add in those things into your life, right? And that's the good news. So some of those factors that go into an authentically resilient life are things like being able to stare down reality, to stare down the brutal truth, and hold this place in the middle of realistic optimism. Pollyanna optimism is seriously dangerous. It's not going to make any wins for you. As dangerous as being really negative. So we need that place in the middle, which is realistic optimism, holding perspective, which is so difficult, especially when you're in something, you become quite egocentric, but being able to step out and have perspective, being able to forge connections, being able to find purpose and meaning in your day, regardless of how painful it is. All of these things, and there are plenty of them, go into our model, the 10 R's of authentic resilience. But some aspects will come naturally to us and some won't. So some of you will already be employing some, but not others, right? And what we need to do is we need to lead into the ones that are hard for us and steer our attention to the ones that are hard for us. It requires intentional effort. It's what you said just now, Pippa. It's a conscious choice. It's a conscious decision. So it requires intentional effort in many areas of your life, but it's going to reward you with a lifetime of thriving.
Myth number 8 really comes from that. I suppose this is the bad news one. Myth number 8 says that building resilience is a one-off event. And the bad news is, sorry guys, but it's not. It's not something where you can read the book, go on the course, get the t-shirt and say, that's it, tick, I've done that. Because there appears to be this belief, but you can say, well, once resilient, always resilient. But in fact, the opposite's true. Authentic resilience is something you have to keep on working on. It really is a daily practice. And on some days and in certain situations, our level of resilience are going to feel higher than others. And other times they'll be lower. Now, that doesn't mean your resilience has disappeared. It simply means that because of your circumstances, your health, your self-care practices and other things, that it means that there's something you really need to start working on. You need to start looking at because you're not paying attention to them. And, you know, Gabi and I just had this example really recently where, you know, she in particular and her family went through an extraordinarily difficult time. And yet again, it wasn't just that, oh, well, I've got the resilience t-shirt, that's absolutely fine. You know, I can promise you, we still have to keep going back to it and going, okay, feeling low today, what am I not doing? I need to get my levels of resilience back up again. But it's a fantastic thing to know that you can keep going back there as well. It's not just a one-off thing. You haven't got one chance at it.
And it's a bit like, I just thought of this now, Pippa, a lovely metaphor. It is when you're baking a cake, you know, you need all the ingredients, but you don't always remember the recipe. You've got to go back to the book and say, oh, okay, what ingredients do I need? Sometimes you can improve the cake, but you always need to make sure you've got the recipe. And even if you know the recipe, you have to keep going back and remeasuring and making sure you've got the right ingredients. And it is a conscious choice. So myth number 8 talks about...
no, it is 9. You're doing 9 now.
We only need resilience during times of trauma and adversity. Absolutely not true. It might feel like that at the moment because there's so much of it going around. But actually, sometimes we need resilience just for the mundanity of life, just for the ordinary things that keep on happening and are relentless. So actually, it's not all about trauma. Authentic resilience is something we need in order to be able to live a life that feels rewarding regardless of what we are dealing with. And sometimes those things that we're dealing with are just plain boring and mundane. They've got nothing to do with trauma. So Dr. Edith Eger, I'm sure you know her, she's an amazing woman. She wrote The Choice. She says, she's an internationally acclaimed psychologist. She says, if we discount our pain or punish ourselves for feeling lost or isolated or scared about the challenges in our lives, however insignificant the challenges may seem to someone else, then we are still choosing to be victims. We're not seeing our choices and we're judging ourselves. Judging yourself takes away choice. It's pointless to judge yourself. Observe, yes. observe with kindness. Judgment shuts down possibility.
Mm. And the final myth, number 10, says that resilient people face fewer problems than others do, so they look like they cope better. So I think that applies to the bouncy kind, the bouncing back kind of resilience, of people who look like they're just bouncing their way through life. And we know that that is just not authentic. It's not authentic resilience. Now, everybody faces situations and challenges in life that require resilience. It's not just about the major traumas and losses. It is about just getting through every day with hope and perspective and energy to make each day count. And if you haven't had major trauma in your life thus far, you are incredibly fortunate. But the thing is that even those who are relatively unscathed by great hardships can still feel stressed and as if they're merely surviving and getting through life. And by the same token, some of the most resilient people are those who've experienced severe trauma, yet they're appearing to be thriving in the face of adversity. I've just read a wonderful book called The Happiest Man on Earth by an Auschwitz survivor who's 100 years old. And, you know, he is truly one of the icons of resilience. He has lived a life which is full and has purpose and meaning despite what has happened to him. Yeah, absolutely. It's the people who very often have been through the most who appear the most resilient. And this is an interesting fact because approximately 50% of people who face severe challenges and trauma go on to experience something called post-traumatic growth. Now, we all know about post-traumatic stress. We know that well, but what about post-traumatic growth? Now, that doesn't happen accidentally. It requires learning the lessons. It's about consciously seeking growth and meaning and purpose in your life, regardless of the pain or loss or circumstances or disappointment. And as Viktor Frankl, another famous Holocaust survivor, said, when we're no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. Now, authentically resilient people don't let their circumstances define them, but rather they integrate them into allow them to live a life of thriving versus merely surviving.
That word integrate is so important. And yeah, we do a lot of that within the model. Okay, so those are the myths of resilience. And now that you know what those myths are, you might just ask yourself, what of those myths have you been buying into? Which of those did you believe until now, maybe throughout your life? Because those might be tripping you up in some way, or they might be self-limiting beliefs. So I think it's really important that you think about those and think about where you are on that scale of buying into those myths. So if we know what resilience isn't, what is it?
So when we looked at those bouncy back sort of versions of resilience, which we know we didn't like at all, we started looking at, so what is resilience really, and what is authentic resilience? And we came up with our own definition of authentic resilience, which is this. Authentic resilience is a critical life skill. It's the powerful ability to survive, thrive, and grow in the face of stress, change, adversity, and trauma. And the good news is that everybody has the capacity to develop greater levels and deeper levels of authentic resilience. So if what we've talked about so far resonates with you and you're interested in finding out more about authentic resilience, there are many ways that you can do it that we want to just share with you quickly now.
So the Resilience Factory does a few things. We teach our 10 Hours of Authentic Resilience course as a facilitated course online on Zoom with both Pippa and I doing the facilitation. And we do only 4 public courses this year. Last year, we did 24 and we nearly killed ourselves. This year, we are doing literally 4 public courses. So if you want to do the course, best you book in. The first one is starting in February, on February the 9th. And how we run them is we run them in the evenings from 7. But the first week there are 2 nights, and then every week thereafter there's only 1 night on a Tuesday. So, and there's an in-depth interactive workbook. The Zoom course is not just about you sitting like you are tonight and listening, it is interactive. We do grounding exercises, we do breakaway discussions, it's completely interactive. The 2 hours fly past like that, you actually can't believe that it's over. So I really encourage you to come on one of those. If you run a business and you want to support your staff, we do this course in specific groups for corporates all of the time. So public courses, there are only 4, but we do courses to corporates on a regular basis.
Now, what we're really excited about coming up is in April, we're going to be launching the self-study video-based course, which is far more in depth. And it's an opportunity to study at your own pace with an in-depth, really interactive workbook and additional resources. So it's a much more deep, far-ranging course than the interactive, than the facilitated course, in that you can take a year to do this course if you want to. You can really take time to go deep into all the lessons. You do also get brought from that into having participation with us, where you have question and answer sessions every month as well. It's a really great opportunity for those people who prefer not to be part of a group. Maybe you feel too vulnerable for that, but it's also, and also for people who, particularly we have people from all over the world, so sometimes the time differences don't work out well. So it's a good opportunity for that as well. And it's also for businesses. Businesses are buying it who want to take the work to a large number of staff as well. In addition to that, into the courses that we run, we also do authentic resilience masterclasses, we do one-off talks, we do in-depth webinars, we do retreats as well.
So a masterclass might be something that you want to do for a whole community or your business when they don't have 12 hours to do a course. The masterclass is 90 minutes long, and it's an overview of authentic resilience. We talk about the most, but we also talk about the characteristics, and we do touch on the model and how the model works. It's not nearly as effective as doing the full course, but wow, it can make a huge difference in people's lives. We've got some great webinars coming up, and we're focusing on new content because a lot of people have been asking for that. So we are doing a webinar, a 3-hour webinar on grief and loss later on in February, on the 26th of Feb. So we will launch that soon. And I sense that that is one that a lot of people are going to need, and that can be shared in businesses quite easily. We have an amazing webinar on authentically resilient leadership, which is very much focused at leaders and executives. And we also do a full one-day workshop. So if you don't want to do the course over 12 hours on Zoom, as soon as we can face-to-face, we do full-day workshops as well. Plus retreats, and we do bespoke retreats for people. So yeah, all very, very exciting stuff. We've also been asked, and I was wondering if you could give an indication maybe later, to put together a webinar for people on practical skills and tools in order to deal with heightened anxiety levels, because it seems that that's a big issue. Yeah. Then, of course, we offer one-on-one coaching, because we are both coaches and we do normal life coaching, but we also do resilience coaching. So those are all of the things that the Resilience Service offers, yeah, and more.
So
our website.
Cool. So if you want to find out any more about those, go to our website and have a look, or email us on info@theresiliencefactory.com. And so please do that, and we'd love to hear from you. But what we're going to do, because we promised you that we would do this before the end, because I'm looking at the time, Gabi, and it is moving on. We want to give you 3 very practical tools that you can go away and start doing immediately.
Okay. So what we really need in times like these is to be able to find our center and our balance in the midst of chaos. That's what we need to be able to do. How do you hold on to that in the midst of chaos? So we've come up with this acronym. We all know the acronym ICE, in case of emergency. So we're using ICE in a slightly different way. So imagine it like this. Firstly, the I. The I stands for insight. In the midst of chaos, it's so easy to lose sight of our internal inner wisdom. It's there. It's in us. It comes with us wherever we go. And yet we disconnect from it, because everything gets focused outwards when we are. Somebody chatting. Can you put everyone on mute, David? Me, she's saying Gabi. Thank you. Okay, so The temptation is just to put your head down and keep going and keep going and keep doing and doing. I can promise you that you're just going to hit the wall, right? So don't do that. It's not resilient. What we need to do is spend time every day gaining insight. That's what the eye is for, insight into our internal world. Our internal world, what sits inside of us, is our internal garden. I want you to think of it as a garden. Don't put up a no entry sign. Sometimes it's scary to go into that internal garden. I want you to rip down the no entry sign and go in. You need to sit in your internal garden. You need to water. You need to put nutrients in the soil. You need to see what it needs and pull out those weeds. Going in and having, what does this mean practically? It means reflection time. And it's a daily practice. It's not something that you put off till the weekend or till you can find time. It's something that you make time for. Every single morning before you go into doing what everybody else needs, you tend to your internal garden. You need reflection time. You need meditation time. Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's journaling. Definitely some breath work. Maybe it's creative work. What is it that works for you to allow you to go inwards in silence, alone, every day? For some of us, it's really hard. But it is the thing that's going to build that capacity to hold difficult things and to listen to your internal wisdom, which is there.
The C in ICE stands for compassion. And now what the world needs more now than ever is kindness. And this is both for ourselves and also for others as well. Because what happens when people step into fear is that our behavior can become really dysfunctional. And my goodness me, we've seen it in politics, we've seen it on in a big way, but I know that all of you will have experienced it in a small way, whether it's, you know, walking along a street or having an encounter with somebody in a supermarket. When we're all under heightened tensions, people can behave in very, very strange ways. And what we need now more than ever is compassion. Because when we get into that scarcity mindset, we become narrow-minded, we become ungenerous, we become critical. And
aggressive, very often aggressive. Yeah.
And aggressive, yeah. And what we need to be thinking about is how to be both kind to other people and kind to yourself as well. So this means not just thinking, but doing. And remember that love should be a verb. It isn't just a thing. Love is a verb. We have to do love. So what do you do to be compassionate to yourself? Now, have a think thinking about that, about what feels right for you, what feels kind for yourself, what's nourishing for you. Is it the food you eat? Is it having a hot bath, going for a walk with a friend, reading a good book, spending time in nature, sharing with somebody how you feel? It's going to be different for each of us. But think about compassion for yourself. And then about compassion to others. We have no idea what other people are going through. So we need to give them the benefit of the doubt. The woman you see at the supermarket with the screaming children, it's so easy for us to go, oh my goodness, not very well behaved. I wish she'd keep her children in check. We don't know if she's just lost her husband. We don't know if she's just lost her job. We don't know. So the truth is that we don't know what other people are going through. So keep compassion front of mind, both for yourself and for other people.
When in doubt, choose kind. Choose kind. And the E of ICE stands for engagement. Engage in your life. The temptation is to shut down, especially when we're in fear. You want to shut down. It's not the answer. The solution to feeling isolated and scared is in really engaging in life and consciously tracking down moments of joy. That's the solution, not shutting down. So I know that it's particularly difficult, and it's really difficult in lockdown, especially when we can't connect with the people that we want to. And if I'm someone whose love language is touch. I'm affectionate. I need touch. A lot of people are. It can be really hard when you're not getting that feeling, but lockdown doesn't mean emotional lockdown. And I'm seeing way too many people going into emotional lockdown because we're in physical lockdown. You need to fight against it. Don't allow yourself to go into emotional lockdown. So outside of work and immediate family, who are you speaking to every day? Who are the people in your life who bring a sense of meaning, who make you feel good? Make sure you're connecting with them. When last did you tell someone what they mean to you? Reach out and tell them. When last did you offer support to somebody or ask for support from somebody? If you're working remotely, which so many of us are, we have to find ways to connect. And we actually have to be quite intentional about it because it's so easy to forget. So with your team, on a social, on a personal basis, it's not just about deliverables, guys. Connection is what we need. So feed it. So remember ICE, in case of emergency, insight into your internal world. That's what's going to keep you going. Compassion, kindness for yourself and others. And there are lots of practical ways to do it. And engage. Fight the urge to shut down. Lean into life and engage whenever and wherever you can. So now we can have a question and answer.
Yeah, so that brings us to the end of what we wanted to just share with you this evening. That's a really obviously a very sort of brief oversight into the work that we do. Resilience, as we said, is a huge topic. It's multifaceted. There's many layers to it. And yet it's great to know that you can go away with something. You can go away just even from today with something. If you have any questions, please give us a shout out, put them into chat. And otherwise, we really look forward to seeing you on a course, on a webinar, on a retreat. Oh, wouldn't it be lovely to be on a retreat where we can actually go away and do this properly? We're really looking forward to being able to do that again. But yeah, any questions?
So any questions, feel free to throw them at us. You can either just take yourself off mute and ask, or you can put it into chat if you don't want to.
Oh, okay, Lauren, thank you. Can you say a little bit more about Authentic Leadership course and retreat? So the Authentically Resilient Leadership is a course that we designed for corporates who are looking at needing a different type of leadership. And particularly we developed it last year where leaders were saying last year, the normal type of leadership we do is not working any longer. We need something different. Leaders now need something different. And it does work as a standalone, but it works so much better if people have done the 10 R's of authentic resilience to start with. It builds on for that. Again, very, very practical. It's a very, very practical course as well. So if you want to know more about that, we're happy to send you details.
It takes approximately, it's a 5 to 6 hour course. So we could do it in one sort of half day with some groups of executives. We started early, 7 and finished at lunchtime, or you can break it into 2 halves. And so then that's retreats. What we are doing at the moment because of lockdown is we are putting together bespoke retreats for people if they want them. So someone comes with a group of people, a group of executives, or a group of friends, or a group of family, whatever, and says, we want to do a retreat. We have access to beautiful venues, to the food, to the yoga, to the meditation. And we normally do a deep dive into one of the sections of authentic resilience. So maybe it's a deeper dive into purpose and meaning. Maybe it's a deeper dive into how to come to terms with reality. It depends on what you need.
And we have also taught the whole of the 10 R's on a retreat weekend as well. So that's perfectly possible too. Jill, you asked about how long each session takes on the Zoom course. The first evening is 2.5 hours and thereafter it's 2.25 hours each session. So I know you're in the UK and so not a brilliant time, starts at 5 o'clock your time. So if you've got, but at least it's over by 7:15, 7:30 so you can have supper with the family. And even better if you can get them to cook whilst you're on the course. That's the idea.
Yes. Any other questions?
Okay. If there are no other questions, it has been lovely to see you. Oh, yeah, Caro. You can take yourself off mute if you want to.
Let me just ask then, I was busy typing. Have you ever considered doing a resilience course for children?
Yeah. Yes. So we developed it. We were doing it for schools, and our first all prepared, ready to go one, which we were doing for Herschel School, was the very week they went into lockdown.
Okay. Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. But on our public courses, we have had youngsters from the age of 15 or 16 upwards. So depending on their own emotional level, absolutely no problem to do. But this model absolutely is transferable to children. It's just that literally since we haven't been able to do it since lockdown. Yeah.
But interesting question that you asked, because the Western Cape Education Department is really interested in taking our model to schools. So we're looking at a way of, we're going to launch the self-study course, which took us months and months and months to put together. And really the tools and principles are the same, but what we would need to do is just apply different case studies to make it make sense for them, for the youth. So we could re-engineer that one for schools. Caroline Evans is saying something.
Yeah, boundaries. So boundaries we cover slightly in the course, because boundaries is such a huge topic. It's such a huge part of resilience as well. But what we do is we actually have a special different 3.5 hours. Is it 3 or 3.5 hours?
3.5 hour webinar.
3.5 hour webinar that we do on boundaries. We ran it once. We got asked so many times. We ran it again just before Christmas, and we'll have another date that comes up in the next. I don't know if we've got a date already in the diary.
We don't, but this is now the fifth person who's asked in a few days, so I think we must have a date in the diary. Yeah.
So we do a particular one on boundaries, and again, like our other work, very, very practical. You come away from there with a roadmap of knowing how to put boundaries in place. Very useful work as well.
Anything else?
Nope. Okay, that's all good.
And you've got our email if you need to ask us something and you forgot to ask it now, or you were too shy to ask it now, info@theresiliencefactory.com, and feel free to reach out anytime. We're about to relaunch our website, which will be fabulous. We're so excited about that. And the self-study course, which I think is going to be awesome.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ruth. Lovely to see you here as well.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. Great to see you. And we really hope that we see you on one of our courses soon.
Yeah, I hope you'll see you on the February course. That would be wonderful.
Brilliant.
Bye-bye, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Rose, it's so lovely to see you.
That's obviously Rose, who isn't Jeff.
Yes. Okay. I will give you a ring, Pips.
Cool. Okay, bye, everybody.